I am a 74-year-old retired person who lives in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. During my career, I was a diplomat for 7 years, and then I worked in the forest industry, the international trade in forest products, for 40 years or so. I had occasion to learn a few languages, and since the age of 60, I have been particularly interested in learning languages. I've learned, a 10 or so, not all equally well, over the last 15 years. And together with my son, we set up a platform for language learning called Link, L-I-N-G-Q. And I have a YouTube channel called Lingo Steve. And I like learning languages. And right now I'm learning Persian and Arabic.
Oh, cool. Okay, perfect. That's awesome. That's super cool. So actually, I have a question. This wasn't part of my main questions, but I am
Right.
curious. At what age did you start learning? Because you said when you turned 60, that's particularly when you got more languages.
Yeah, no, I would say that when I was 16, living in Montreal, although Montreal is a bilingual city, in those days you had about like 1 million English speakers, and they lived in their own little world, and 2 million French speakers who lived in their own little world. We had French at school, and I couldn't speak French. But then I got very interested because I had a teacher a professor, I was at McGill University, who made French civilization very interesting. So I started watching, La Nouvelle Vague movies in French. And I got so keen that I ended up going to France, where I studied for 3 years. So that was kind of the beginning.
Sure.
And then I joined the Canadian government, and they sent me to Hong Kong to learn Chinese.
Oh.
And after that, I lived in Japan. So it was a series of circumstances. But and during my sort of working life, I managed to learn 9 languages. But it's in the last 15 years or so that I've particularly, I've learned another 10 or so.
Sure.
Since
Oh man,
then.
that's
So,
awesome. Okay, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Okay. Next question is, what advice do you hear in your area of expertise, which is in this case learning languages, that's bad advice?
Okay, bad advice is everything that tries to tell people that they have to master something. Is bad advice. So you've got to learn the basics first. You've got to get it right. Or, you listen to something and you get a comprehension question and you get some things wrong. It's in the nature of language learning that we learn and forget. We don't master things up front. There's always things we don't understand. So it's far better to have an approach that says, I'm gradually going to absorb this language. There will be moments when I feel I'm not doing very well, where I couldn't say what I wanted to say. I got the comprehension questions wrong. I didn't understand it correctly. None of that matters as long as you keep going.
Sure. Okay, definitely. Okay. All right. I think that also kind of ties into. I had the other question of what advice would you give to someone who is just starting? If they don't know where to start, they're not sure. What are your best advice for someone who's just starting?
Okay, so the language learning is your own activity. No one is going to teach you the language. Don't expect a teacher to teach you the language. You have to discover the language.
Sure.
So therefore you have to enjoy the process. You have to find a way to enjoy the process. And don't be hard on yourself when you get things wrong. Typically if I start into a new language, I'll go 3 months with a lot of repetitive content, such as the mini stories that we have at Link, where we deliberately repeat the most common verbs in the language, lots of repetition. But then, as soon as I can, I want to get away from that beginner material and go into things that are interesting to me, even if they're difficult. So that you move to where you're discovering words, you're learning about things, you're doing things that are interesting, and you just also happen to be learning the language. So you're not necessarily just like deliberately studying the language.
Sure. Okay, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel like that's something a lot of people forget, is that the whole reason you're learning a language is so you can communicate with people and have fun. And if you're not having fun during the process, what's the point? Because that's, 90% of it. So, yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. What else? I tried to keep it short for you.
Okay. I would add one thing, you can enjoy the language without talking to people. Listening to songs, watching movies, reading books. So don't think that you have to spend all your time talking. In fact, the more time you spend listening, the sooner the language will enter your brain.
Sure.
The more time you spend talking, you'll just be repeating the same limited vocabulary that you have. Now, even when you're talking to people, mostly it's an opportunity for you to hear more of the language. So.
Sure. Okay, interesting. Okay, actually, that brings me to another question I have is, a lot of people I've talked to they have trouble getting over their fear of speaking with others when they're just starting to learn. What's your advice on getting over that fear and embarrassment?
Well, I tend not to want to speak too much at an early stage in a language because it's going to be difficult.
Sure.
The worst thing for me is not understanding what people are saying. So, and I think if we have good comprehension, we are less intimidated. If we can understand clearly what people are saying, we can struggle in saying what we want to say, but at least we understand.
Sure.
If we understand well, that means we have a lot of words. If we have a lot of words, as we start speaking, we're going to start using more and more of them. But we will always understand more words than we can use. That's just normal. That's even true in our own language, but even more so in a foreign language.
Sure.
So build up your comprehension, build up your vocabulary so that you're able to defend yourself, right? You feel exposed if you don't understand. Sure. You feel exposed if you don't have words. Once you understand well, you have words, you might struggle a bit, but you will gradually improve and improve quite quickly. So, and of course the other thing is don't worry about making mistakes.
Sure.
Don't worry about making mistakes. Just go at it, and the more mistakes you make and the more things you forget and relearn, the better you're going to speak.
Sure. Okay, definitely. Okay, awesome. Any final words of advice? Anything you'd like to say?
Well, it's that, learning languages, I guess English is the language that most people are trying to learn, those that are not native speakers of English. But learning different languages brings so much in terms of, connecting with different cultures, different people. So, and we live at a time when language learning has never been easier because there's so many resources on the internet, Netflix, YouTube, books, audiobooks, ebooks, podcasts. Anything in the way of grammar that we want to look up, we can quickly look it up. We don't need the teacher to give us the language. We can find the language. Sure. So, and we can connect with people, speak like we're speaking right now. So
sure.
It has never been easier to learn languages. So I just encourage people to, if they're learning English, fine, go on beyond English. There's lots of languages to learn. Once you get into them, you discover just how rewarding it is.
Definitely. Well, okay, thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate your time, and thanks so much for letting me pick your brain and all your wisdom about learning languages. Appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it. Good luck to you.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye for now.